The Shaking My Head podcast features interesting discussions about topics that have frustrated the hosts, Alex and David. Each episode is meant to question the quirks of society and bring to light subjects that intrigue or bother us. If you're here because something has you shaking your head, even if it's just life, you're in the right place.
I will start off, and I think the one thing I've talked to you about a lot was the thing where a lot of parents think that their kids have ADHD.
Is this really a disease, or is this something that just everyone has on a different level? It's not really a disease, or is it where medical companies are, coming out with drugs are supposed to, suppress, ADD, and they're just, creating this drug to make more money.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a combination of all of that. It's
right.
Not only are the drug companies making it easier to create drugs and have people get prescribed these drugs that can solve everything. I mean, there's a drug for everything. And I think a lot of parents who are rightfully worried about their kids are, they may jump to the conclusion like, oh, I need something to help my kid focus in class. Or there's got to be an explanation, and the simple explanation is when I go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, well, your kid exhibits some characteristics of ADHD or ADD, that they may prescribe the drug to the family. I don't know if there's like incentives behind that. The drug companies are paying these doctors per prescription that they're giving out.
I'm sure they are. Because I guess the other thing I have to say about this is, let's make this a little extreme. 30, 40 years ago, was there such a thing as ADD and ADHD? I mean, how come? If not, then how come this stuff just came out of nowhere? Is this like an amazing, but a discovery? Is this a real medical condition, or like I said, did someone just come up with this to make money?
Right, because technically, I mean, I'm sure there are definitely people who suffer from it or are dealing with it.
I think I suffer
and
from it.
rightfully so.
Shit, if I'm not interested in something, I'm gonna be what you call like ADD or at least ADD, because I'm just not interested in the topic and I don't really care about it. So I'm just gonna like lose attention and do something else that I'd prefer to do.
Right, and it's to varying degrees. I mean, I think everyone has issues with attention if they're bored. I mean, especially if it's school and you're a kid.
Yeah.
You're going to get bored. Every kid is bored or does not want to do the work. It's just normal.
Yeah.
And then there's like, so I mean, everyone has a varying degree of it, maybe. And then there are actual kids who do, or normal people, adults as well, who deal with it as a very serious part of their life. And then there's the portion of the population that's diagnosed it when they actually aren't.
Okay.
Right. So like, I think me and you, we may have, I mean, I don't know. I would say I probably don't.
I don't think I do.
But I can see going to like a school counselor or nurse and she being like, oh, well, he's not focused, let's prescribe him some medicine. And kids these days, they are pretty hyper. I don't know, maybe it's just my feeling.
People say obesity is a disease. I don't know, is that what it is?
Obesity?
Or yeah, some people say obesity is a disease, or it's genetic. And there's nothing, because it's in their genes, there's nothing they can do about it. But I mean, the other arguments, your metabolism affects that. Also, I think your gender is a big difference as well, because usually like women will have more body fat because they're supposed to carry a baby. So, anyways, I don't know if we're finished talking about ADD, but this is just another example, I think, where I guess is it really a disease, or is it just, are we just playing the blame game here, and we're just gonna leave it at that, and anything that's broken with people or society, that's just how it's gonna work going forward.
Yeah, obesity is definitely prevalent now in society.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to be 250, now I'm 185. I mean, I'm not blaming.
You used to be obese.
I'm not blaming. No, I seriously was obese. I mean, I'm six. For any of you, for you guys out there, I'm 6'1", 6'2". I was 250. Now I'm 180, 185. So
by the technical definition, obesity is defined like on BMI, right? Like if your BMI is over a value,
23
then
or 24 or something like that, I think.
So anyways, it's the ratio of your height, your waist, your weight,
right.
Your age. So,
but I think that's also kind of generalizing too, because the other thing is your weight and your height and all that. Like, what if you have more muscle mass than fat? You could be technically, what they consider as obese, but you're actually just muscular.
Yeah,
and muscle weighs more than fat, so.
Yeah, true. I mean, in a technical sense, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, generally, we're talking about, is obesity a disease per se? I like your point about, is it genetic, or, so if it's genetic, then it's hard to say like it's something that we can control. And I feel like, at least I feel like at some point, I just don't. I like to think positively. So I feel bad if it's genetic, if it's like something you can't escape, because if it's, you're born and you don't have control over it, and it's like, oh well, you're gonna be obese because you're gonna get passed down to you. It's like you're running. You already don't have the head start. Like you're already in the back of the pack. What I'm saying is, I hope obesity is something that's, when we talk about, is it genetics, can it be passed down, or do people have a lot of control over it? And I would hope it's something where people have control over it. Like, it's not, I wouldn't want to consider it disease, just because if it's genetics and you don't have control over it, then it's almost like you started out kind of at a I don't know, you're just not on the same plane.
But in that case, let's think about that. So like, if you're genetically obese, does that just mean you have a lower metabolism, or like I'm wondering how that would be, like that'd be the case for genetic obesity.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
Yeah.
Obesity to me, okay, when I think about obesity, I think about you are beyond overweight, right? So like, this overweight is you are in the higher weight range, and obesity is you are beyond the overweight weight range. So obesity is on the point where there's some, your BMI and your weight's beyond overweight, so you're bordering on territory where it's just not healthy to be at that weight.
Okay. So a couple things. I mean, there's those shows like Biggest Loser and stuff where people are obese, like where I'm agreeing with what you're saying, where people are just maybe on the heavier side, but where it's like dangerously unhealthy, and with exercise they lost. It's a lot of work. I mean, I think anything in life, if you want to attain it, is hard work. Even if you're a normal person, you want to get a six-pack, it's a lot of work too. So in that case, it's like, if it is genetics, because the other thing I was gonna it's kind of a counter argument, but everyone's born differently. Some people are taller, some people are shorter, some people are physically more attractive to others than that's what you're born with. And instead of just saying, oh, it's just genetics, I would say that height is a genetic thing. It's really hard to, you can't really control your height. But then,
yes. But can you control obesity?
I feel like it's controllable. It's just, I think a lot of people don't necessarily, they just don't want to deal with it, and then they just say like, oh, it's genetic and that's just how it is, and just it's a cop out. I think.
Yes, I agree with that.
And that's, back to what I was saying about how people just come up with these diseases and they're just like, oh, that's just because I have this disease, it's out of my control, and that's that. And if you're okay with that, that's fine, but I just say like, don't blame, everyone's born differently. They have their own, everyone has their like shortcomings, so most people learn how to deal with it.
I agree. Everyone has some control over it, and I think there's some differences in terms of the amount of self-control you have. So the example I would give is, are there more obese people now than there were 20 years ago? So I think obesity isn't a good cop-out, I think, is kind of the point.
Yeah.
Because there's ways, if you've tried everything and I see you've tried everything, I mean, some people are like, oh, I can't lose weight. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing? And they're like, oh, I've been exercising a lot. And I'm like, oh, have you been eating well? And they're like, oh, yeah, I do, but not, I'm not very religious on it.
Right.
At some point, you have to change the routine of your eating habits and your exercise habits. That will change the routine of your body. That's just how it is. So
right.
I think, and you were talking about that show, Biggest Loser. So there are obese people who can lose weight. So it's not necessarily a cop out there either.
Right. And I mean, yeah, so I think like obesity is just, it is a legitimate problem, but I wouldn't say it's a disease. No. And then for ADD, I don't know, like, I wonder if, back to that, just because I also think that's, I don't know, I think that's also like a cop out too, because what I think is happening is, like, kids are just playful and parents are concerned, teacher may be concerned or something, just because, they may be a little bit more, some kids may be a little bit more like spaced out, a little bit more hyperactive or whatever. And then, just to keep them to, I guess, kind of control their activities. There's like, oh, you have a disease or whatever. I'm going to start getting, putting you on pills at an early age so that eventually you're just going to become dependent on it. I think what parents need to do is stop being concerned and actually do something about it. I'm not saying it's the parents' fault, but I think like we should change how parents maybe approach the problem. And what they should do is maybe they should, try and not necessarily discipline, but try and train their kids to, be like, hey, this is not good behavior. Maybe you should be doing this instead.
Do you think like alcoholism is a little bit of a disease?
Yes and no. I think it depends on if you know what your limits are and the reason why you're drinking. I call myself a functioning alcoholic. But then I actually looked up what a functioning alcoholic is defined as, and they say if you drink more than 14 drinks a week, then you're more than a functioning alcoholic. So the functioning alcoholic is 14 drinks a week or less, I think.
What is considered a drink? Is it just if you had a...
I think it's just like a mixed drink, a beer, a wine, like whatever you fit in a bottle or a glass.
So a can of beer is considered a drink. One can of beer?
That's how I would perceive it as. But I see what you're saying where one can of beer does not equal one glass of wine, which does not equal
Correct.
One mixed drink or one like a shot of something on the rocks. Those are totally different, alcohol levels. But I think I think the thing is, okay, so if you're talking about just purely an alcoholic, I think it's someone who can't function without drinking. So you feel like after like you're going through withdrawals, you physically can't, like are in pain because you're not drinking. That's one reason. I think another reason is just like if all you do is just drink at home by yourself. This is not you're not drinking socially. And I mean like I will have a beer or two after work, just it might be by myself because I work remote, but it's just like it's a good way to just relax after a day of work. But if you're sitting there just like for the purpose of just drinking, just because to maybe drink your sorrows away or something, that might be being an alcoholic right there. So I think being aware of your situation, like what you drink and how much you drink, is good. Is a good thing to know, and probably wouldn't constitute you as an alcoholic. Also, if you're going out like every weekend and getting blackout drunk, I don't know if it's necessarily an alcoholic, but that's
a problem.
That's a problem for sure. So like I think what I'm saying is
there are people who do that, right?
There are people who do that every week, and I mean like the reason I think most people drink alcohol is one, it's good social lubrication, as in you gain what I call liquid confidence. So like if you like a girl and you're a shy person, drinking alcohol and getting that like buzz gives you the confidence to go up and go talk to someone. Good social lubricant, and also a good social way socially to talk to people. And that's like I said, that's some people like the buzz feeling. Some people say that they're OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I feel like most of the people that say that are that OCD is about a particular thing. Like it's like I'm OCD about how I put things back in my backpack or something like that, or OCD about I don't know, about the floor being wet or something. But I don't really think that's what what OCD really is. Like when someone's OCD, they're OCD about everything. When I think some people are like, "Oh, I'm OCD about this," that just means you're particular about something, and that's not what OCD is. And I think it kind of is a pet peeve when people say that. It's just like, but it's not a disorder. You just don't like it when people do that. It's not gonna kill you. It's not going to mentally affect you, I don't think. You might it might be like an itch you're trying to scratch if someone does something a different way, or if you don't do it your particular way. But when someone's OCD, it's a real deal. It affects like every part of their life.
So I will say I'm the kind of person, when I go to someone's house, I respect their house in terms of how they do their house, but I need to have a somewhat clean house.
Okay.
And there is organization in pretty much everything that I have.
Right.
I organize in a particular way.
Okay.
To your point, I think
that's like
I don't know
lifestyle.
if I have OCD, but I have a it's almost like a innate desire to keep things organized, and like I clean a lot more than anyone I know. Like I do like a house cleaning, like vacuuming and throwing away and organizing stuff. I do it probably every other week. I don't know, and I feel like if it's at my house and like someone doesn't, like if they're in my house and they don't put something back where I usually put it back, then it will bother me for sure.
Okay. Shit, that means.
And when they leave, I will put it back.
So I think that's just being particular, and that's just maybe like a lifestyle kind of thing.
I mean, I'm very much I don't know if I'm a germaphobe, but I am a very much like I wash my hands pretty religiously. That's another pet peeve. I don't know why some people don't wash their hands,
especially coming out of the bathroom.
Yes, I see it all the time. It's freaking
because they're lazy fucks.
It's not they're lazy. They just grew up that way. I don't know. They just don't wash their hands. I'm like, why? You're in the bathroom, just do it.
Right. So I think those are more like pet peeves rather than OCD. Like, I think if someone was OCD about, like, say, someone washing their hands, they would probably go as far as, like, hunting that guy down, making them wash their hands, and making sure they wash their hands before, like, that person leaves their sight. That's what I think, like, OCD is. Versus, like, hey, like, this guy didn't wash his hands. What the fuck? There's a nasty fucker right there. And then that's that. I think that's the difference. Like, where it bothers you so damn much that you have, like, you won't stop thinking about it. Or you won't stop, it's just, that's the only thing that comes.
Then I would say that is somewhat of a disease because.
Oh yeah, I think that's a disease. But I think that what I kind of want to pinpoint on was how people say they have OCD while they really don't. And that might be a disease right there, as in people, just not knowing what the fuck they're talking about and trying to make it as a disease while it really isn't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's different levels, and it may not be OCD per se, but
yeah.
I don't think I haven't really met someone who's OCD then.
I don't think I have either, and my understanding about OCD is it's some crazy shit. It's not like the things.
Like, how do you live? Like, you're
the
so paranoid.
Exactly, it affects your life that much. It's part of your life, and then, like, it's painful to live that way, right? Like, I'd imagine it'd be painful to live that way because it's just always there. So so this is my pet peeve. I'm not saying I'm OCD about it, but when people say I'm OCD about this, I'm like, nah, you're really not. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, all these things that we've been talking about so far, we're not trying to, like, tell people they're wrong or whatever, but
right.
I just think that, like, maybe there's some education required, so that we can make the world a better place to live.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and tune in next week for more stories about what has got us shaking our heads.